Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Hannibal Season 3, Episode 12. The number of the beast is 666. The episode in a nutshell is a brief summary of what happened in this episode. So we start with the episode Will imagining himself with tails and a wing, looking at Molly, killed the same way that the families were killed by the Great Red Dragon, and we then see that Will is explaining this to Bedelia, who then of course asks him about it before the conversation then switches over to Hannibal and how Will feels like Hannibal has stolen his family away from him, and he refers to Bedelia as either Black or Bluebeard's wife. I can't remember if it was Black or Blue, but someone's wife. And then she says that if she was going to be the wife, then she would want to be the last, which then makes Will ask her if Hannibal is in love with him, and she confirms she believes him to be, and the only question is whether or not Will has any sort of reciprocation to that. Which then moves on to Jack speaking to Hannibal about Will, before it then moves to Will, Jack, and Alana discussing a plan to try to lure out the Red Dragon, as Hannibal still has refused to help Jack with the finding of the Red Dragon. This then leads to Franklin confronting Hannibal about an article that he wrote in a psychological journal, which basically refutes what he said in his book, but he said what he did in the book on Hannibal's behalf, going out on a limb for him and lying for him in order to help his insanity plea go through. And now Chilton's reputation is down the drain, and he's also refuted his own insanity plea. And Franklin, of course, is very upset about this, but ultimately there isn't anything that he can do. So he then leaves, and this is when Franklin, Will, and Jack give the planned interview with Freddy, which is how they plan to provoke the Great Red Dragon, and they say some pretty terrible things about the Red Dragon reverting to his previous name of the Tooth Fairy and disparaging his character and his sexuality and ability to perform in an intimate situation, and a few other things that are obviously very provoking, as that is what they are trying to do. And of course, this works, and Franklin is the one who ends up kidnapped, not Will. Once he's kidnapped, Dollarhide then goes about intimidating Chilton, who is, of course, extremely terrified, and tries to talk his way out of it. But ultimately, the Great Red Dragon isn't really giving him anything as far as his attempts to talk his way out of it working, because he believes that he wants Chilton to see him. And then Reba stops by, and she's attempting to reconcile because Dollarhide is called in sick to work. They work in the same location, so she brings him soup to try to help him feel better. And once she is then gone, Dollarhide goes back to intimidating Chilton, wanting him to tell the truth of him. But Chilton, of course, then throws Will and Jack and everybody under the bus and says he was forced to lie. He didn't really believe those things. And so the dragon has him record a video before he then bites his mouth off. The lips are sent to Hannibal in a letter, which he opens with Alana watching, and he's questioned by Alana and Jack, but again still refuses to help, but does say that Chilton getting his lips bit off puts him in a good mood. And then we have Will, Jack, and Alana watching the video of Chilton, where he essentially talks about, how great the dragon is and how Will better watch out because the dragon is coming for Will. And then they again show from the back this time, or like Dollarhide's back, Chilton getting his lips bitten off. Um, Will then, oh no, and then Chilton is let go. No, okay, sorry. Will is threatened in the video. We then see Will kind of crouch down, grab his hair. Then we see that transition to him speaking to Bedelia again about Chilton, where Bedelia points out that Will putting his hand on Chilton's shoulder in the picture for the article is what led to Chilton being kidnapped by the dragon, because it was seen as an intimate gesture, and that Will definitely did that on purpose. And eventually it gets around to Bedelia commenting on how Hannibal still has agency out in the world, and that agency is through Will. We then see Will and Jack talking on the location that they had chosen to lure the dragon in. And Chilton is set on fire, then put in a wheelchair and rolled towards the fountain that was in the background of the picture, which mimics Freddy's faked death from the earlier seasons. This then leads to Will visiting a very burned Chilton, and of course is accused of setting Chilton up knowingly, which Will can't even really deny as he speaks to them. And then it switches for the final scene to Dollarhide kidnapping Reba and revealing to her that he is the dragon. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it's now time to rank the episode. And as always, we'll be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list first, followed by the personal ranking list. So obviously we have our multi-episode supporting character development. Reba was kidnapped at the end, and that is worth 2 points. Then we have the multi-season supporting character development. And the first one is Franklin's kidnapping and all of the things that went along with that. For example, filming the video, the intimidation scenes, etc. Separately, I gave an additional 3 points because of how significant the events were, but then he had his mouth bitten off and then he was burned in a wheelchair, mimicking the death of Freddie Lowndes from the earlier seasons, or the faked death of Freddie Lowndes, we should say. And that then brings us to an 8 out of 10. And then I did feel that there was an impactful / memorable moment line, etc. And that is when Will and Bedelia, in their session, reveal that Bedelia at least believes Hannibal to be in love with Will, and asks Will whether or not he has any reciprocation, though that is not answered in this. It is the fuel, I feel, for a lot of fan fictions, and give a lot of those fan fictions a canon basis with which to work, which is why it is a scene that is very repetitive in the fan fiction scene, and I do read a lot of fan fiction, so one, I do think it is memorable. And then the number 2 thing is I did feel that it was impactful because it transcended the show into, again, at least the fan fiction scene. I don't really look at Hannibal memes, so I don't know if it ever transcended into there, but at least in the fan fiction scene, definitely a lot of people use that as the jumping point for Will and Hannibal fan fictions. So I do think that scene had enough impact to be worth the points. +3. But I did feel then there was one negative, and that, of course, was Will setting up Chilton. If it had been Dollarhide just kidnapping Chilton on his own accord without the setup, I feel like, again, villains like Hannibal and Dollarhide, they're expected to have bad behavior, so it doesn't usually lose points. But in this case, it was Will, who we have better expectations of, who did set up Chilton, who, while not entirely innocent, has never done anything worth having his lips having his lips built off. Oh my goodness, I can't speak. Having his lips bit off and then being burned alive, most of his body burned. We don't even know if he survives those burns, but at any rate, when Will does go to visit him, he is talking, so he at least right now is still alive. But definitely I felt that was worth -2 points, which then brought us to a final score of a 9 out of 10. And that brings our mostly objective ranking so far to, in first, Dulce Digestivo, The Great Red Dragon, Primavera, Aperitivo, and The Woman Clothed in Sun. This episode came in 7th. The number of the beast is 666. Antipasto, Contorno, and The Woman Clothed with the Sun, secondo, and then in last place so far is And the Beast from the Sea. Now, my personal ranking for this episode, I did like a lot of the imagery. Obviously, it did have one of the more memorable scenes in it, so that is obviously a positive. We had quite a bit of progress happening. We saw, of course, what happened with Chilton took up most of the episode, but it was horrific. It was a major character development for that character. And we see that the plans are being set up in order to lure in Dollarhide in order to catch him, and Hannibal's playing his side of things while Will's playing his side. And so a lot more is happening, which is all positive. But ultimately, the episode did focus a lot on characters that I don't particularly care about. I mean, Hannibal's in a cell. He can't have a lot of screen time, so that sucks for this part of the season. Will isn't even getting a lot of screen time. He's setting some things up, but he's really more background and consulting at the moment, rather than like specifically involved. The main focus of the episode was basically Will setting up Chilton and then Chilton's encounter with the Great Red Dragon, which again did take up a majority of the episode. So we had a lot of Dollarhide, we had a lot of Chilton, we had Reba in the end, we had Jack, Alana, and Will, which again focused more on Jack and Alana's part than Will. He was more like background, putting in a word or two here and there. The main thing that Will had was again that memorable moment with his Bedelia therapy and Bedelia talking to him about his experiences with Hannibal as someone who also has had experiences with Hannibal. So while there was a lot of positive, because of the focus on characters that I don't necessarily care about, I did only give it a 7 out of 10, but I did give it the highest ranking 7 out of all the 7 so far. And that then brings our personal ranking to in first, Digestivo, Dulce, Contorno. The number of the beast is 666. I put in 4th place. Then we have And the Beast from the Sea, The Great Red Dragon, Aperitivo, Primavera, Secondo, and The Woman Clothed in Sun, and The Woman Clothed with the Sun. And then in last place so far is Antipasto. Bringing us now to our series ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, Season 2 came in first so far with 86.92%, Season 1 in second with 83.85%, and then Season 3 so far has a score of 97 out of a possible 130. Then on the personal ranking side, Season 2 came in first with a score of 88.46%, Season 1 with 66.92%, and then Season 3 has come in with a score of 76 out of 130 so far. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Hannibal Season 3, Episode 12. The number of the beast is 666. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.